There's a guy who likes games, and the best that he's played are the ones that you'll see on the top 100. Repeat that part. Top 100 games. Good.
Let you like that I get a little bit, just a little bit freaky. That's right.
Hello and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the only board game review show that's seen an advanced screening of Star Wars The Force Awakens. Meh. Ladies and gentlemen, this is my top 100 games of all time, and today we're going to be taking a look at my numbers 90 through numbers 81. So without any further ado, let's get started. Alright, number 90 is a game that, it's a very unusual game. It's one of those games that kind of defies classification in a lot of ways. Its theme is certainly pretty weird, wild, and wacky. And this is Duel of Ages 2. Now, Duel of Ages 2 came in at 43 last year on my list, so it has dropped quite a bit, but I still think it's a very fun game. It's a very interesting game. Again, it's just a game I don't play as much. Now, Duel of Ages 2 is a game that is essentially where all sorts of characters from literature, from history, from science fiction, from folklore, fantasy, all these different genres come together and they fight each other. And they fight each other through kind of a clever card mechanic. You draw a card to determine whether or not you hit an enemy, then you draw other cards to determine exactly what kind of damage you did. It's a very, very interesting system, and it's very unusual. It's very, very fun. It can be kind of a bear to set up because you're looking for all the character pieces, which is kind of hard to find, but it's a very, very fun and unusual game, and I do enjoy it. It's got a special place in my heart. But that is Duel of Ages 2 from World Spanner Games, my number 90. Number 89 is another game that is new to the list this year. Now, before people get mad and say it's another war game, as people want to do, let me say this is not a war game, despite the fact that this game is the First World War. It's not a war game, it's a Euro game disguised as a war game. It's disguised as a war game because, obviously, it looks like a war game. When you get the pieces, they look like war game chits. The map looks like a war game map, sorta. But when you get it out, you realize it's got different fronts of World War I, the Western Front, the Italian Front, the Eastern Front, and you assign troops and different strengths of troops to different sections of the front. And the problem is you have a lot of decoys, so your enemy doesn't know exactly where you're placing your real troops and your enemy troops, and so it's kind of a bluffing mechanism here, and then you're trying to move along these tracks. It's very Euro-y, but it doesn't look Euro-y, so I think this is a game really that can kind of unite war gamers on one hand and kind of Euro gamers on the other, because it is so clever. And this game's been around for a while. It's been around for like 10 years, and it doesn't get the love I think it deserves. But that is my number 89, the First World War from Mayfair Games. Number 88 is another game from Mayfair Games. This is Lords of Vegas. Lords of Vegas is a tremendously fun game in which you are a kind of a casino developer and your opponents are casino developers, and by using cards and paying money, you are essentially trying to build up the best casino on the strip. Now, when you build your casino of a certain color adjacent to somebody else's, you kind of have these power struggles for who is going to control the casino. The casinos have little dice slots where you place the dice, and you can kind of roll the dice to challenge to see who gets the higher number, then controls the casino. They're the boss. You can get points, but you can also get paid, and it's just really fun, really clever, from Mike Selinker, who's designed some great games. But I really enjoyed Lords of Vegas, so that is why it is my number 88. It did slip from 55. 55 was, again, this is a game I like a lot, just haven't played it as much. So, Lords of Vegas, Mayfair Games, my number 88. Number 87 is a game that was 54 last year, and that is A Few Acres of Snow. Now, A Few Acres of Snow is a very fun kind of deck-building war game. Now, a lot of people out there say the game is broken. You know what? I don't listen to them. I've just played it without people telling me how to play it, and I've enjoyed it. I think it's fun, it's clever, unique. Again, it's a game I haven't played a lot lately, which is why it has fallen. But it's still an interesting game. It's got a lot of really cool and interesting mechanics that work there, and it's just... it's more deck builder, I think, than traditional war game. And I like it because, to me, it kind of satisfies the war game craving and it kind of satisfies the deck building craving. So it's a perfect fusion of the two things. It's set in the French and Indian War of the 1750s and 1760s, and it's absolutely brilliant. And that is A Few Acres of Snow. That is from Tree Frog Games, I believe, produced that. Number 86 is new to the list this year. I played it about a month or so ago for the first time, and this is Victory in Europe from Columbia Games. The Victory in Europe is a block war game set in World War II. You are, each round, you're kind of playing cards to try to determine initiative and determine kind of any special rules for that round. It's a very fun and interesting wargame experience. What's cool about this game, too, just aesthetically, is the map is not a square or rectangle. It's an oval shape. It almost looks like a globe, but it's just of Europe. And so that's pretty cool. It's just a fun, good wargame, very Axis and Allies-ish, but a little more complex. There's a little more meat to it. And if you like those kinds of war games, and you like block war games, which increasingly I am, then I highly recommend you check out Victory in Europe from Columbia Games. That is, of course, my number 86. Number 85 is another World War I themed game. This is Wings of Glory. Wings of Glory, which is from Ares Games, I believe, is a game. It's kind of like Star Wars X-Wing, but here, instead of in space, you're World War I dogfighting. And here, instead of templates, you lay down cards, and your airplanes follow the paths on the cards. It's very interesting. It's very fun. You're drawing damage deck. You don't roll dice to determine damage. Essentially, if you just get another an enemy airplane in front of you within range, you can target it, and they have to draw a damage card. So it's really a game of just maneuvering around the play area, trying to shoot each other down. I really like the theme. I really like the cool models, and it's just a fun flight path system that they came up with. So that's from Ares Games. That is Wings of Glory, my 85. It did slip. It was at 61. Again, not playing it as much, but a very fun game, Wings of Glory. Number 84, again, is another really fun deck builder. This is Thunderstone Advanced Numenera. Now, I have never played any of the other Thunderstone versions of the game. I've only played this one. This is a really fun one. You've got a village where you're kind of buying cards and collecting cards. You have enemies coming out of like a cave, as I recall, and you have to have light to be able to see into the cave, but you also have to be carrying weapons to go after them. It's a very fun and different kind of deck builder. I really enjoyed Thunderstone Advanced Numenera. It really captures the imagination the way good deck builders can. You just got cards with some fun artwork, and yet you can really build stories in your mind, and Thunderstone Advanced does that quite well. Again, this game did slip. It was at 63, so it dropped 19 points. Again, we're going to see a lot of droppage here, but I really like Thunderstone Advanced Numenera. Very good game. That is from AEG. At 83 is a game that also, too, fell from 68. It's a game from Academy Games that I think is not only a fun and interesting game to play and a hard game to play, but I also think it's probably, arguably, the most important game on this list for its educational value, and that is Freedom, the Underground Railroad. This is an absolutely brilliant game that, as much as a board game can, kind of illustrates the horrors of American slavery. And, again, people have said, is this the right subject for a board game? And of course it is, because it's going to teach people about it. It's going to start young minds asking questions. Some of my friends, they know I'm a historian. I was playing with them. They were asking me questions about it, and it's great. And I've read a few books on the Underground Railroad and slavery, and it really kind of sparks and excites my imagination and makes me want to learn more about it. So I thoroughly enjoyed Freedom of the Underground Railroad, an absolutely brilliant game. You're moving these cubes, trying to get them from plantations in the south, trying to get them north, but there are slave catchers that move along these kind of, under certain conditions, move along the tracks and try to intercept your slaves. And there's times where you have to make tough decisions. Well, I can sacrifice maybe this guy and this guy if it means I can get all these more, to freedom. And there is that point. I think Paul Dean said it. There's that point where they stop being little cubes, and you start thinking of them as people. And it's a little unnerving, it's a little unsettling, and it is brilliant, and it's fun. So that is my 83. It did fall from 68. Again, a lot of new games this time. But it's a very fun game. I highly recommend you check that out. That is Freedom, the Underground Railroad from Academy Games. 82. This is a new game this year, and this is a game that I played again just a few months ago, and this is Risk Game of Thrones. Now, I've got to tell you, I've only played the skirmish. I still haven't played the domination version. I want to play the domination version, but the skirmish version is a lot of fun. Now, it's basically Risk, but there are a few twists and differences here. And, of course, critically, you're playing on a map of Westeros, and that offers its own unique challenges. But you really kind of get into the whole Game of Thrones thing. I think this is not a game you're going to enjoy if you're unfamiliar with Game of Thrones. At least, I don't think you'll enjoy it that much. The game, especially the skirmish game, where it is so much like traditional Risk, with a few little tweaks and bells and whistles, it really depends on you being a fan of the series. And I am, and I think it delivers well here. It's not as good, of course, as another Game of Thrones game we're going to talk about later in this list, but still, I enjoyed it quite a bit. And that is from USAopoly. That is my number 82, Risk Game of Thrones. Number 81 this year was number 47 last year. Again, it slipped because I don't play it as much. I know I've said that 100 times, but it's the fact that other games keep popping up that I like more. But still, this is a very fun game, and it is the third game in just this 10 list today that takes place during World War I, or as I call it, World War Fun. I am, of course, talking about Axis and Allies World War I 1914. This is a variation that came out a few years ago of traditional Axis and Allies, but instead of the World War II that we're used to with the Axis and Allies titles, we're actually seeing it in World War I. And what's cool here is instead of the World War II games where you invade a country, you keep having these roll-offs. You roll back and forth until through attrition, one side or the other has to either retreat or is destroyed. Here, you move your forces in and you roll one attack, they roll one defense, and then you stay there. And you got to wait until the next turn before you can resume that attack. So there's this, it kind of simulates that attrition that actually occurred during the First World War. And that is very, very cool. It's a lot of fun. It's a long game. I really think they could have streamlined it by not having as many nations involved. I really wish they had made this just a 2 or 3 player game with maybe one side being a combined Britain and France, one side being Germany, one side being Russia, and their allies respectively. Instead, there's like 8 countries, which sounds cool, but it really slows it down. And one of the reasons why I haven't played it because it's so long because of all those things. Still, this is from Hasbro Wizards of the Coast. That's Axis and Allies World War I 1914. My number 81. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, and we hope you're enjoying this top 10 list. I hope to bring the rest of the list out to you soon. Please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and ladies and gentlemen, this may be a top 100 list, but I wish I was a top 100 kissed. But I'm not, because girls don't like me.
Please somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm...
And these games... Start repeating again. And these games...
Oh, I was looking at something.
That's fine, just repeat. And these games that you'll play are the best. So he says, to be viewed on YouTube are the top 20. Repeat that part.
Sorry.
Top 100 games. There's a guy who likes games, and the best that he's played are the ones that you'll say to be viewed on YouTube, and the games that he plays are the best that he says are the top 100 games.
I thought it was around.
It's supposed to be.